Introduce this gentleman. The first time I met Jeff was in Chicago in 2011 when we received our 33rd degree. And I've spoken with him over the years, and it gives me great pleasure to introduce Right Worshipful Jeffrey M. Williamson, Deputy Grand Master of the Grand Lodge. Jeff, please come forward.
Thank you so much for that introduction. Good evening, everyone.
Good evening.
I'm pleased to have this opportunity to address this gathering as the featured speaker for the third and annual Stanley Weeks Law Day Lecture, which is hosted by the Scottish Rite, Valley of Jamestown, and the Robert H. Jackson Center. I see from my research that the first two men who previously spoke have had extensive professional backgrounds and distinguished careers in the practice of law. Illustrious Brother Stanley Weeks, whose memory we honor in this Law Day Lecture, practiced right here in the Jamestown area. And while I do not possess any background in the practice of law, Brother Stanley Weeks and I do, however, have a great similarity in Masonic experience and affiliations. Our mutual Masonic experience and connections enfold deep and abiding principles and of life and a value system agreeably to the theme of this Law Day Lecture. A simple review of the life of illustrious Brother Stanley Weeks will reveal his deep commitment to his community, having served in a multitude of public service vocations, including mayor and the Board of Education, and on numerous boards and associations, to name a few. His charitable works also include volunteering for such organizations as the Cerebral Palsy Association, the Boy Scouts, the Girl Scouts, and the Historical Society, as well as his active participation in his Episcopal Church. These things represent the epitome of a Master Mason, a way of life, a carriage of behavior embodied by our teachings. It manifests itself in a way a man acts in his community, in his place of business, his house of worship, his circle of friends, his family, and in the privacy of his own home. We have traveled here from the Buffalo area this evening to, in some way, pay homage to this distinguished man and Mason, and to perhaps use this brother to illustrate as a striking example of one who, by the moral law, and by one whom we should all emulate, and it is my pleasure to present this address to you for your consideration. Freemasonry, the moral law, and civility, a force for good. As a Freemason, we make this assertion: the world desperately needs what Freemasonry has to offer. Our very existence on this planet would be more agreeable and uplifting if the world around us would simply embrace the gentle behaviors and resulting actions which emanate as a force for good from our gentle fraternity. As part of this address, we necessarily need to explore these three aforementioned qualities. Freemasonry. As a Mason, I refer to Brother Stanley Weeks as my brother. The title brother is Masonically given because of the fatherhood of the Supreme Being. And when we are made a Mason, we enter a new tie with the Almighty Father and look to Him as our fraternity's God. From the very beginning of our initiatory journey, we believe that Freemasonry teaches men the practice of charity and benevolence, to protect chastity, to respect the ties of blood and friendship, to adopt the principles and revere the ordinances of religion, to assist the feeble, to guide the blind, to raise up the downtrodden, to shelter the orphan, guard the altar, support the government, inculcate morality, promote learning, love God, fear God, implore His mercy, and hope for happiness. All of the above stated attributes were certainly a part of illustrious Brother Stanley Weeks' internal makeup. What a challenge it is for each of us today to emulate and to expand these virtues as we chart and navigate ourselves across this tempestuous modern culture in which we live. What is the moral law? A review of texts will reveal that moral laws are described as rules of behavior by individuals or groups that flow from personal conscience and are not necessarily part of legislated civil law. It is a system of guidelines for behavior. These guidelines may or may not be part of a religion, codified in written form or legally enforceable. For some people, the moral law is synonymous with the commands of a divine being. For others, moral law is a set of universal rules that should abide to everyone. Ethical practices and principles held by the followers of Christianity have greatly influenced the development of U.S. secular law. As a result, Christian moral law and secular law often interlap in many situations. In 1954, Pope Leo XIII stated that the moral law is engraved on a man's heart, that man participates in the wisdom of God and in the goodness of God, and has a sense to discern good and evil. The moral law generally exerts a far loftier level of expectation of conduct than civil law, and holds the person to a higher level of accountability. What is civility? Thomas Spath and Cassandra Donkey, founders of the Institute for Civility in Government, state that civility is claiming and caring for one's identity, needs, and beliefs without degrading someone else's in the process. Civility is more than just politeness, although politeness is a necessary first step. It is about disagreeing without disrespect, seeing common ground as a starting point for dialogue about differences, listening past one's preconceptions, and teaching others to do the same. Civility is hard work of staying in the present, even with those whom we often have deep-rooted and fierce disagreements. It is political in the sense that it is necessary prerequisite for civil action. It is political as well in the sense that it is about negotiating interpersonal power so that everyone's voice is heard and no one is ignored. And civility begins with us. Masons have become increasingly aware of the growing uncivil culture which has been magnified through movies, TV programs, and society in general, and have begun initiatives to address civility in the world. The erosion of the belief of treating others with respect, grounded in the golden rule of doing unto others as you would have others do unto you, seems to have escaped the entertainment media, which is on a quest to erode that standard, which with publicly abusive foul language, public sexual conduct that belongs in private, and disrespectful behaviors towards others as if nature gave them the right to do so. For this reason, civility projects are springing up nationwide, attempting to return civility to society, not only personally but professionally as well. Several Grand Lodges, including the Grand Lodge of Free and Accepted Masons of the state of New York, have also initiated Masonic civility projects as well. Freemasonry and the Force for Good. Brother Stanley Weeks was worshipful master of Mount Moriah Lodge in 1965. An excerpt of our public installation ritual would have charged him thus: "You agree to be a good man and true, and strictly to obey the moral law? You agree to be a peaceful citizen and cheerfully conform to the laws of the country in which you reside? You promise not to be concerned with plots or conspiracies against the government, but patiently to submit to the law and to the constituted authorities? You agree to pay a proper respect to the civil magistrates, to work diligently, live creditably, and act honorably by all men?" These 4 questions, to which Brother Stanley Weeks and each worshipful master of a Mason's Lodge must give his assent, is an incredible assurance for the promotion of civility, the compliance to moral laws, the civic laws of our country, and as a pledge to live creditable and a civil life with our fellow man. Can you think of governments and cultures throughout the world where the above 4 questions cannot be answered in the affirmative? I know I can. As stated in the beginning of this lecture, the world desperately needs what Freemasonry has to offer. Our very existence on this planet would be far more pleasant and uplifting if the world around us would simply embrace the gentle behaviors and resulting actions which emanates as a force for good from our gentle fraternity. Brother Stanley Weeks was a lawyer, a community servant, an elected official, a church vestryman, a military veteran, an upright man, and a leader. He was a 33rd degree Mason. He passed this earthly life in January of 2010 at the age of 97 years old. His life stands as a bright beacon, a true example of a Freemason who obeyed the moral law and with civility was a force for good. Our fraternity holds in its rank many men just like illustrious Stanley Weeks, and invites all men of good report who are not in our fraternity to join us in our noble work. We thank the Scottish Rite, Valley of Jamestown, and the Robert H. Jackson Center for the invitation to speak to you on this, the 3rd annual illustrious Stanley Weeks Law Day Lecture, and extend our fondest best wishes and approbation on behalf of the almost 38,000 Masons which comprise the Grand Lodge of Free and Accepted Masons of the state of New York. May God bless our men and women serving in the armed forces. May God bless America, and may God's richest blessings be yours. Thank you very much.
You know, I can't think of a more appropriate topic for tonight's Stanley Weeks lecture, and something more fitting to the life's work of Stanley Weeks. And, you know, in my years of prosecuting war crimes, and, you know, just think what a little civility would have done. And you certainly, there's certainly a growing movement across the country to recognize civility and to recognize what it can do, and just to listen, and just to give hear everyone's voice. And believe me, for something like that to put out of business what I was doing, and to put those prosecutors, war crimes prosecutors out of business, and those war crimes tribunals out of business, I can't think of a better place to start. But what I would like to do now is I would like to invite Brother Jim Stoll and illustrious Brother Steve Whitaker to the front, and if you would please assist me in awarding this plaque to our guest speaker. And then right out here, so you can get a picture.
Well, on behalf of the ancient accepted Scottish Rite in the Valley of Jamestown in the Jackson Center, Deputy Grand Master, we would like to present this special plaque to you as a token of our humility to listen to such a wonderful, wonderful, grand, deep, true presentation. We thank you very kindly from the bottom of our hearts.
Thank you very, very much.
Thank you for the Valley of Jamestown.
Thank you very much, my brothers. Thank you.
You need to get a picture.
Thank you. Okay.
Thank you,
Very,
Brother
very much.
Toastmaster. Appreciate it. I'll take my work.
Thank you.
Thank you, Deputy Grand Master.
Okay. Now, the last 2 years, we had equally, I would have normally said that this was our best Law Day lecture ever, but because we've got our first 2 Law Day lecturers here with us tonight, I'm going to have to say that you continued an absolutely wonderful tradition of having terrific Law Day lectures. And so, but we didn't give our first 2 speakers a wonderful memento to recognize them being with us on those evenings and the wonderful message that they presented. And so I would first ask Judge Mordew to come down to the front, please, who was a wonderful first lecturer on Law Day, and his presentation about Robert H. Jackson was absolutely wonderful, and we very much want to recognize him as well.
And we, from the Valley of Jamestown, we'd like to present you with this memento for the fine job you did. And it was always tough being the first one, because we never knew what we were getting into at that time. So